Welcome to the Supporters Fund Ask an Angel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Potvin, and today we want to welcome Erik Bullen. Thank you very much for joining us today, Erik. I'm super excited to chat with you today because I've been watching lots of video on you, lots of content. There's a lot of great things out there, and there's a few things that I really want to dive into, but the best way for us to start is if you can give us a little bit of a background on yourself, kind of where you've come from. And there is a long list of amazing startups, businesses all along the way. So love to learn more about that. And then one thing about you that nobody would know.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here, Jeffrey. I've been in the startup and corporate innovation space my entire career. I was employee number one at a startup back in the early 90s. This was back in the heyday of when you could actually take components of PCs and sell them, right? So the days of Dell and so on. And we went up against Dell and Apple and CompuServe and others. So we sold to colleges, university students because everybody at that point needed computers, right? So both the typical desktops these days, and then eventually laptops as well. So I was employee number one. I saw an ad for an associate essentially at my fraternity, and long story short, I took a 10-mile bike trip in the middle of which was a hot, about 100-degree day in Virginia. I went to William and Mary. To go for my interview and with the founder, and wore the only suit I had, and I had a beaten up bike, and I went about 10 miles, and eventually had the interview and walked into Lee's office, who's the co-founder. And the first thing he says is, "Hey, you look like you need a beer." So he goes to his full fridge, and his office is a typical startup founder office, right? It's messy and it's chaotic and so on. So anyway, ended up joining the company, really loved it. Lee Scruggs and I are still best friends to this day. He's been my mentor for many years. We see each other usually non-COVID years, once a year at least, or twice a year. And we've been best friends since that time. So that really started me on the journey of really loving to build things and working for startups. A number of reasons. I did eventually end up leaving the company and moving to Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. Family reasons. I needed to move there. I did work for a while as a software engineer, what's today Verizon. Used to be Bell Atlantic. Really didn't care for the corporate environment, and then end up back at a startup, in this case, a agency startup. And then 3 months after joining, went over to Amsterdam as the first employee to open up the Dutch office. So spent time there, and this was during the heyday of the internet agencies, and eventually we ended up being acquired with 12 other companies, with a PE supported company, and went public as well. And then subsequent to going public, about a year later, joined another startup in Amsterdam, which was a U.S. company and based in Boston, called Northwire. So DNA of McKinsey, Accenture, and then also some startups as well, to really focus on what's kind of the precursor to design thinking to help companies to innovate, and whether it's large companies or startups as well. So I joined the company to grow the Dutch office, and eventually the internet crash happened, and and that's how I ended up in Boston, where I am today. So and we went up to HQ, continued to build the company, although we did close the European side, and then continued working with startups and corporate ventures as part of Northwire, which was eventually acquired by another company. So went through a second acquisition at that point. So I just kind of fast forward through our career. Subsequent to that, I've been a founder. I've been a board member. I've been an advisor for a number of different startups. And then also a few years ago, I was the CEO of a digital marketing SaaS startup. Exited that in August 2018. And then at that point, for a number of reasons, including personal, my daughter at that point turned 5. I said, look, I want to spend less time on the road. And I was a consultant for a while as well. So I spent a lot of time going from Boston to Seattle and back and forth for about a year or so. I also worked for a company called Brightcove, which is an online video provider, like global services there. So I was responsible globally for APAC and Europe and US. So I was on the road a lot. And at that point in 2018, I said, look, I want to spend more time with my daughter. my family, and at the same time spend more of a portfolio approach to things I do. So since that time and right now, I spend my time really on three things. One is I give back to the community. I mentor at Techstars, Mass Challenge, and several other accelerators as well. I'm also on the board of directors for an organization called Venture Capital. We provide venture capital training to minorities and women to find entry-level jobs into the VC world. I'm also on the board of advisors for an organization called the Capital Network, which provides fundraising training for all founders, but also specifically focused on female founders as well. And we have a program running right now. The second bucket of work that I do, I advise pre-seed, seed stage companies directly, and occasionally scale-ups as well. Either as an advisor or focus on product operations and scaling and customer success. I also, on occasion, play fractional COO. So I'm currently fractional COO for two companies. One is Guidely, which is a marketplace for coaches, mentors, and therapists, and also BitHoop, which is a next-generation search language for B2B. And the third bucket is on the investing side, which I think part of what we're talking about today is I'm an LP in two funds, Mendoza Ventures, which invests in fintech, AI, and cybersecurity, based here in Boston, but has a national scope and also has invested in companies in Canada, both owned by minority and women as well. And right now, I think about 68% of the investments of Mendoza is into underrepresented founder-like companies as well. And then AI Capital, which invests in applied AI. On the angel side, I'm part of a number of groups. One is Launchpad Venture Group, which is based here in Boston, more of a traditional angel group, about 150 members right now. High net worth individuals, more of a traditional non-operator, I would say makeup, doctors, lawyers, etc. Other professionals, some former operators as well. And then TBD Angels, which is fairly new, just founded last year in April. And up to this point already has 220 members. We're somewhat biased towards Boston because the founders are based in Boston, including David Chang and some others who are serial founders. But we're national in scope. We have a very diverse membership, about 38% women right now. And we invest a pretty broad range of sectors. So we don't limit ourselves. We think we can get better deals and interesting deals, right, in terms of not limiting ourselves to some sectors or even geographies that some angel groups look at. So we'll take a look at pretty much anything. And as opposed to traditional angel groups, which tend to have a cycle of, hey, we'll take a look at 3 or 4 companies a month, we have continuous deal flow as well. And we're very technology enabled. So a lot of our communication is done, email, Slack, etc. And all the pitches are video recorded so members can look at them subsequent to that. And then another feature of the group is we only invest if we can at least invest $50,000 by all members. And then we invest via SPV. So it's easier for the founders. We'll have one line item on the cap table. So since the founding, have invested about $3.8 million so far. Average deal about $100,000. I think the maximum deal so far has been about $550 into an AI company. So that's hopefully somewhat of a background of what I'm doing these days.
Amazing. And before we dive into that, one thing about you that nobody would know.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 things. So my history, I'm half German, half American. I was born in Germany, lived there for 12 years. My mom was German. My dad's American, although with English background. And a few years ago, we did a trace back our ancestry on the English side. Excuse me. And my ancestry actually traces back to Anne Boleyn, who's the second wife of Henry VIII. And so it's kind of, she lost her head. So I'm going to try my best not to see that, get that same fate. But it's kind of an interesting family history on our side. So, but Bullen, it's been spelled, the name's been spelled many different ways throughout history. So, and then I'll give you the second one. Fun fact maybe is I love frozen Kit Kats. So if I can be bribed with those. So I get my Kit Kats and put them in the freezer, and it's my tasty treat.
Oh, that's amazing. My mother does that. I like putting a lot of things in the freezer, but I'm not a chocolate bar guy. But the kids love them. So
Yeah,
it certainly works very well. I guess that way they don't melt as fast, so they got a bigger crunch.
right. Sure do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, to kind of take a step back into your journey, you've done a lot of amazing things, and I think a lot of it starts with that first job that you biked the 10 miles to. Uh, how much of that do you think really played into where you are today? That the learning that you went through, being that first employee, the hands-on doing everything, that really kind of structured the learning throughout the journey to get to 2015, where you decided, okay, I'm kind of done of doing all these things. I really want to get back and start investing in companies and start doing more in this space. But as most people, they don't just dive into it and say, hey, I'm going to be an investor today. They have some real gradual growth that gets them to there. And from all of the roles that you've played, and it seems like a lot of them built you into learning a lot about this, putting you in the forefront of how the investment works. What's the point of boards? What's the point of really how this structure is going to work out and benefit the startup? How much was that first role really beneficial to you?
Yeah, I'd say it was a huge influence on my. It was my formative years in many ways. You know, when I went to university at William Mary, and I did have a I did have a I do have a degree in business as well as computer science, so it really fit within what my degree and my studies were as well. But it was a nice complement to that, the more the theoretical aspect of learning and then actually doing as well. And I will, I'll always look back at some of the, you have those little pieces of the stories you kind of tell about, like for instance, my interview, right? That's one thing. I kind of remember also Lee as a mentor and as a coach and as the leader of the company, right? So for instance, learning about how to deal with customers and the fact that there are bad customers and good customers and how to deal with them. And for instance, I had an episode with one customer. I was having support, and there was some friction, and the customer called Lee up later on, and he was very unhappy about it, right? So Lee said, hey, you know what? Let's go take a walk. Let's talk about it, right? So it's almost like I'm drawing a line between that, the kind of the walking and talking type, which you see more of these days versus having a meeting. Hey, let's just take a walk and talk about these things, right? And learn about it. So I learned a lot from Lee about that, how to deal with customers. And even some of the fun things, like we're a scrappy startup, right? We had a beaten up van that we used to deliver computers to university students across the middle of the country. The Virginia, Maryland, and Carolina, essentially, right? So one day we were packing the van. Lee and I went back into the office to get some additional things to start our trip to, I think it was Virginia Tech at that point. And next thing you know, we go back outside and this van is smoking. Right? The engine started like smoking, etc. Like, oh man, what are we gonna do now? So the van was shot. So I had a small Hyundai hatchback, right? 90,000 miles. We packed everything into that Hyundai. And next thing you know, Lee's driving, 6 hours to various colleges to deliver computers. So you get these types of fun stories of what it's like to have a startup and be scrappy and just to make things work, right? And to work through your challenges. So yeah, it was very formative. I really enjoyed it. It really kind of lit the fire in me in terms of building things, of also the startup world itself. And then, but at the same time, like I said, I've spent time on the corporate end and really helping larger corporations to innovate and applying some of those lessons there. And at the same time, loving being able to go back to very early stage, a few people in the garage, if you will, right, quote unquote, and just started building things as well and kind of figuring out product market fit. Right? Do we have something here that people will really love and we can build and grow as well?
And taking that experience of getting into the grind and solving problems as they're happening, like the truck being on fire, it kind of reminds me of when my brother and I were building computers and servers in our basement as well. And it was, we didn't know what we were doing until we were in the thick of it. And you kind of sold beyond your means. You sold a lot of things that you were like, I don't even know if I can do this. And then as you started to grind through it, you started to find ways to operationalize it and speed up the process and get better and better until you could almost turn this into a cookie cutter operations. So as you were kind of going through these, were they throwing you into the mix of this? Obviously, you're fixing by getting the delivery, but you have a background in software engineering and you're doing a lot of other things. So were you kind of a jack of all trades? So when it came down to learning about how the investment vehicle is coming through and are they raising funds? And then you went in and started being more innovative. Was that kind of started through that process, or did you learn that as you kind of went through all these different companies?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a very early stage about having wearing many different hats with this particular company, right? And then building computers, doing software, sales and marketing. We had a retail arm at the same time. We had an early stage of e-commerce as well, and we had a direct mail business. So I learned a lot about different aspects of running a business. And then at the same time, I think I kind of found my calling in terms of even today. I don't consider myself like the amazingly creative Steve Jobs visionary, right? I'm more of the operator, right? I love to build strategy, working with founders who are very visionary, and then building a strategy and then executing on that. So I kind of say my analogy sometimes is being a producer in the music world, right? So you've got the creative bands and the singers and so on, but you need a producer to kind of say, this is how we'll create this amazing song that everybody will love, right? And I can see the creativity there, but we need to create some structure around it. So that's more my thing at this point, even today. But throughout my career, as I was working with different companies, I did spend time on various functions, right? Sales, marketing, operations, customer success, leading large teams, leading small teams, doing innovation strategies. So it's really given me an appreciation and understanding of various aspects of business, right? And I'm not an expert at everything. So for instance, if you talk about, let's say, HR or finance and so on, I'll let other people do that, right? But in terms of generally going to market, building great teams, scaling companies, that's more of my thing. And how do you execute? How do you build certainty? How do you build structure, process, technology, and people around a small thing and then grow that, right? That's why I think I've been a CEO before. And I certainly enjoyed it, but right now, in this point in my life, I enjoy more being the COO. There's a wide definitions of COOs, right? I'd enjoy being the right-hand person to someone and say, okay, you're the visionary. Let's figure out how we build this thing and scale it and grow it.
No, I love that, because a lot of the times I think founders or people that are in business, they think that because they have an idea that they have to be the CEO and they have to be the visionary and drive the business. And not everybody carries those skills. Not everybody is the front man. And I think, like you said, you've kind of built through all these skills. And what I love about it is that if you look at where am I going to be the most successful, taking the learnings that I've gathered, I would rather be that secondary person supporting them, knowing that in the back end, I'm running and operating and smoothly scaling this business for that visionary. Let them be the face of the organization, but I'm going to take this tool belt that I've built over the years, where I know what triggers to push and pull, that's going to help this business move. And that's what scaling is, and that's the whole piece to it. And if you don't have somebody that actually understands all those mechanisms, then you're siloed, and you've got marketing, sales, operations, and then it becomes kind of a bit of a cluster because you don't have that key component that understands all these different elements. You don't have to be a professional at all of them. You just need to have a good, solid base of understanding. And that's what's going to help support that line of business and grow it.
Right. Yeah. And let me just flip that too, because it's an interesting angle, right? In terms of put my investor hat back on, right? In terms of what I look for in founders is founders who, one is they have conviction about the business, right? They really I love founders who deeply understand their sector or their industry, and they're essentially scratching their own itch. One of the companies I'm invested in advising is called Focal Point. It's a procurement SaaS application, right? And the founder has been a procurement exec for more than 25 years. And the problem he's solving is that these large, major Fortune 500s and a lot of mid-level companies are managing billions of dollars of spend on spreadsheets and PowerPoints, right? And he has not been able to find a solution to do that. So a month prior to the pandemic last year, he said, look, I'm going to branch out on my own. I'm going to build the solution. 9 months later, he's in market with paying clients, right? That's a great story, but he really understands the problem that he's solving, and it's the problem that needs to be solved. But I think one quality I look for in founders is kind of going back to what you were saying, right? Founders who understand their strengths and weaknesses, who have conviction, but at the same time understand, hey, am I the right person to lead this business? are you as a founder building this business because it's your own ego, right? You want to build this business because it's about you, or are you building this business because you want to solve this problem? And are you willing to step aside and say, you know what, this is my baby. I want this baby to grow. And I'm not necessarily the best person at this stage to do that. I'm going to bring in somebody else to help to do that, right? That's what I want to do. I want to create the best company out there, do the best thing for my clients, my customers, my investors, and it's okay that I'm not in charge. Right. So that personal ability to understand your strengths and weaknesses and acknowledge that, I think that's really important from an investor perspective to see in founders.
I like that. And it's kind of interesting. And I don't remember who said this, but there was this line where the person posted and said, I've never had an admin assistant longer than a year because they always drive harder, faster, and better than myself. And I'm always moving them up in the business. And what I like about that idea is that you're doing the same as that leader. And when you're looking for those leaders, and in my perspective, I always look for a leader that has that fifth gear. I want someone that has that one extra gear that just knows what it takes. I used to call it psychotic. Everybody told me that's the wrong word. So I've gone to the fifth gear. And what I think that fifth gear is that's the visionary side. That's understanding the team. And if you can find that right team member, that COO or that admin, whoever that person is that's going to just drive, build, and grow, then you're coaching. You're literally just sharing ideas. You're letting them operate it. And once they start to do that, you can kind of see you're elevating them and their game's elevating. And now they're taking over and running. And ideally, if they do this in the right way, and I'll use Flow as an example, when Nicholas built the company, he got it to a point where they were going public, and then they brought in an executive who was top tier from Nestle, one of the world dominating water companies, and they came in and took it over, and he kind of just stepped in and became managing director side of it. But he saw that this vision was, I can get it to here, but I know that this is going to go further if I can bring these other people in and bring in the right operating people, bring in the right financial people. And then you become that driver. You're still the face, but at the end of the day, it's, again, not your ego, like you said. It's about understanding what everybody else's strengths are and letting the professionals really elevate their game by giving them the time and space to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think just in terms of case studies, examples, right? I don't know if you heard about Toast, a company that's based here in Boston, right? Just went public a few days ago. Massive, right? A debut. And Toast had very similar stories where the founders initially built the company, built the technology and product, and they eventually brought on Chris Comparato, who has been the CEO so far, right? And really leading and scaling the company. And Chris is an awesome person, awesome leader. Has done some amazing things in terms of growing Toast and prior to that as well. But he was the right leader to put in at that right time, right? And you can see the outcome at this point. So, and I think they've built a great team. They've got great chemistry as well as a leadership team.
And it makes a big difference, from all of the interviews we've done and all the discussions, that probably the top two things that investors look for is team. Team's in there. It's always in the top two, maybe top five if you're really diving in early, because early stage don't typically have a big team. But that's what you're looking for. So you got to be able to believe that founder can really structure a lot of good people around them. And that's what's going to make this all fly. So having you as that fractional COO is probably massive for any company to have, because, again, of that experience and how you can envision where this is going to go, and then how you kind of shift everything in and taking your investor hat, taking your operations hat. Man, there's a lot of things that you're really bringing into that forefront that's any leader would love to have, right? I would actually step down and just make it a CEO, just make it easier. But it really does make a big difference as a business is growing, to find those right people that can get behind your vision.
Yeah, and I think that just again, in terms of qualities, if you, let's say you're a founder, and in terms of building your team, right, you need to really find people who are player coaches, right? They can coach the team, that can bring in new talent, that can at least at the same time be able to grow the talent as well to help them be successful, and at the same time dive in and do some of that their own, right? But the same, again, be the player, be the coach, but at the same time being able to start delegating, not feeling like you're giving up ownership, right? And I think one thing that I just recently discussed with another person is, whatever you're delegating to another person or your team member, they're never going to do it, more than likely never going to do it 100% the same as you want it to be done, right? But as long as they're doing it, let's say 85 to 90% of the time, you ought to be okay with that, right? Of course, if you do it 10%, right, that's a problem, right? But you need to be able to say, you know what, it's not perfect exactly like I spend it to, but I still need to be able to delegate. I need to give some authority and autonomy to the person that's doing it. And you know what, sometimes they might do it better than you are, or you would, right? So you need to be able to empower those people and be able to grow your team and be able to give them, and again, empower them, let them do their job that they're hard to do. And you know, again, I look at myself personally. I'm not the best salesperson, right? I would want to hire somebody who's a hunter. I'm more of a farmer, right? Just looking at it historically, I'm not the best hunter, right? So for me, if I'm building a company, I want to hire a hunter who can go out and sell product, right? And build relationships with clients. So you've got to understand your own strengths and weaknesses and acknowledge those.
I love that. And I love the player coach mentality, because right away my brain went to Slapshot. Reggie Dunlop, he's the player coach. He's sitting there helping everybody, getting the game, winning. But maybe not the best analogy, but he's still, the movie was still awesome. But at the end of the day, you really are having to coach everybody. And I think that's where the CEO eventually has to go. They're the visionary, they're the mantelpiece, but really they're empowering everybody and growing them. And just like in the Toast scenario and Flow and all these other great companies, even on our side, we've got Laura, who's a great GM. All of this comes down to is the operational side of execution. And when you've got flawless execution, and like you said, if it's 90 or 100%, your business is going to be that much stronger and have a better ability to survive and grow in the markets. And then you start to build on those other facets like sales and execution. But it's certainly crucial to any team.
Right.
So now, kind of as you've been working through this amazing journey that you're on, one of the things that I really loved about kind of that 2015 turnover, when your daughter was 5 and you decided, I need to start doing something so she can have a better growth as a child and growing up and being able to get into better companies in the future, you started to focus on businesses that were giving back, impact businesses, women founders. And I really love this, because I think a lot of people talk the talk, but they don't actually ever get into the game of this. And one stat that you threw out right away at the beginning, and maybe you know or don't know, but you said 30% of this was women-based investors, which is another one that's very tough to get out there and get women investing in companies, or get this whole segment to open up, because there's the fear of the unknown. If I don't want to do it, I'm uncomfortable, I'm not going to venture into that space. And I think your numbers are already higher than most angel groups, because the industry has been predominantly male focused, and because of the high risk. But I love the fact that that is something that you've kind of dedicated your time to, with Mendoza and the other venture firms, with that high focus on it. How much have you seen change? And I think we could debate this one for days on how much change that's happened in the markets in the last 5 years, specifically in innovation and tech, but even more in BIPOC and in female founders. How much have you seen change since you started working in this push in 2015 to today?
Yeah, I would say that there's been, over the past couple of years, right, I think there's been, and I would segment people or groups or organizations into 2 areas. Well, one is the ones that talk about it, right? And then 2 is the ones that talk about it and actually take action, right? And kind of put the money where the mouth is. So you can see both. I mean, for instance, that latter one is like Mendoza Ventures, right? Very much focused on investing in underrepresented founders. There are a number of venture funds, quite a few venture funds that have popped up recently, right? That really focus on that, and that's all they do, right? That said, I think if you look at the overarching data, at least over the past year and past quarters, the amount of money that's been invested in the venture industry has been the highest that it's been for a long time, despite COVID, right? But then you look at the percentage share of money that goes to underrepresented and women founders, that has pretty much stayed flat, right? So that's, you know, again, on one hand, you get this anecdotal data about more focus on that part of the industry of helping women and minorities. On the other hand, the data still isn't showing that that's actually making an influence on the total share of pie, right, of the venture fund. So I think right now it's still about 3% total. So I wish that would change. But what is encouraging is the focus, again, of these specific funds focused on underrepresented founders. Also, underrepresented, I would say it's not just about women and minorities. It's also about other geographies, right? So other than Silicon Valley, other than Boston, right? Other than Berlin, let's say in Europe, right? So focusing on the middle of the country, Cleveland, Ohio, in Ohio, Pittsburgh, et cetera. There's some great companies out there and great founders. They're just starving for funding to build the company. So I think with COVID-19, we have seen more venture funds and angel groups as well to focus on other areas because it's the future of work. You can be anywhere. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley. You don't necessarily have to be in Boston. There, I also see some groups and VCs that still say very strictly to, hey, you have to be here, right? We have to be able to see you. And then others were saying, we don't care. Well, we'll start investing in companies, great companies with great potential that are in other geographies, and potentially not just in the US, but also in Canada, right? And Europe and APAC as well. So you're starting to see, I think, more US money going into other locations worldwide as well, which I think is very encouraging too.
The diversification of dollars being pushed cross borders is pretty exciting. And you're right, there's been a massive amount of dollars that have popped out of nowhere. I don't know, the bank vault must have been left open overnight or something, but it's been funneling out like crazy, which is great. What I have noticed, though, is that through the messaging of talking about women founders or the BIPOC stance, I think what it's done is it has filtered a lot of dollars into the space, but what it's also done is that it's opened up for minorities and women founders to actually decide to open businesses. Whereas I think before you had a very low number of actual people that were in that space. So it was predominantly, we'll say, males, but that's because in tech space, it predominantly is males coding or whatever, building these companies, engineers, whatever you may say it is. But today, I think what it's done is it's enlightened a lot more people to say, I can be in this space, and now I've got support. And I think with that alone builds so much more confidence. And now we're seeing, like 10 years ago, I would say it was less than 5% of founders were female. Today, you're probably looking at closer to 20, 25%. They may not all be raising funds, but there's a lot more people getting out and risking. And I think that message is massive. And I'm so happy that it's shifting that way. And I would say in the next 10 years, there'll probably be an equal balance. And then it's really, how do you get those dollars into those companies? And that just comes through building. So the more times you build and fail, you're going to build a real amazing company on that second or third time. And you're going to get all the support you possibly need. And you can see that there's some massive female-run companies, even in the BIPOC space. Some people say they don't like that term, but I guess it tries to cover and encompass everything. But I think from that minority standpoint, you're seeing some amazing. There was a company the other day that launched on the markets. It was an Indian-based company that was launched in the U.S. So amazing, and it's taken off. So there's a lot more happening, and I think that COVID created a lot of this. It's created a lot of energy, and it's opened up a lot more entrepreneurs coming into the market. And I think we'll start to see a lot more dollars shifting into that space because there's some pretty amazing companies that are getting started up in the last year and a half as well.
Yeah, and I think the other angle here is in terms of additional money going into this market, right? Into private companies is crowdfunding, right? And you really see, I would say, you look back, let's say 2 or 3 years, right? As crowdfunding was starting to grow. Occasionally you kind of had mixed messages, right? Hey, is a company going onto a crowdfunding platform because they can't get venture capital or angel investment, right? So, but I think that whole mindset has shifted, especially over the past, let's say, 6 months, and crowdfunding is exploding right now. And you're starting to see more and more companies that are raising both through the traditional channels, angel and VC, and then in parallel are raising on crowdfunding platforms as well. So for instance, I'm actually a venture partner at Republic, right? So we're really focused on, again, diversity of capital inflow, of increasing the share of investors, especially those that are not the high net worth investors. And then at the same time, being able to provide capital to the underrepresented founders as well. So it's one reason why I joined as a VP at Republic, is because of Republic's mission, right, of democratizing investing, essentially. So we've seen a lot. You've seen, for instance, this was kind of a one-off deal with Republic, but Backstage Capital, which is a venture capital firm, actually raised in Republic, right, and was able to raise in 2 rounds, right. First with because the rules changed. First, they could raise $1 million, to roughly about $1 million, a little bit more and change. And then eventually raised the second one, and they could raise up to $5 million, right? And they were essentially oversubscribed within a few days. So I think we'll start seeing more of that as well, where I think they might, funds might start raising through the crowd as well, right? In addition to just the more traditional channels with high net worth individuals and family offices and so on.
I love the decentralizing of that for sure. We've been looking at it. We've actually been working on a partnership with one of the Canadian-based, so that when our companies that we bring to market, they will go in both places when they're raising funds. We look at this as just another avenue to bring on new fans, new investors, and you kind of have to look at every dollar as a vehicle into a new customer or into a new investor. And I think it's wrong to look at it that it's just where you can't raise money. But you're right, when it first started, that's what it was looked at, is that you're just going to go to take and pillage money from people that don't specifically have a lot, and you're going to take it from them because you couldn't raise it through the venture side. But I think what that's done is it's equaled the playing field, that you're now not looking at, because you have money, that you should know how to pick a good company. Has nothing to do with that. There's so much more involved in this stage. And I think a lot more people, just like betting on ProLine or anything like that, it takes time to learn, figure it out, and become good at it. And I think that's the same thing with going into all of these SPVs and going into these other venture spaces, is that anybody can do it. Everybody should have the right to do it. And once you do get in there and start playing with it, you eat your own risk, and you can win, and at the same time you can lose. So you have to value how you want to approach that.
Right. Absolutely.
So now that this market's really picked up and changed so much, it's exciting, because nowadays, you're getting so much. We've got companies coming from Africa, all over the world. There's just so many players that are now coming to the space. It's opened up globally for all parties. What's next for you guys on the investment side? Do you start going cross border? Do you keep kind of feeding inside of the U.S.? What kind of things are interesting you today?
Yeah, I think so I'll probably look at the different groups I'm involved with, right? So let's say TBD Angels, which again, we're not focused on any particular sectors, but we definitely have members that are interested in subsectors such as cannabis, for instance, right? Or more of the non-traditional side that some venture funds or angels may not want to touch. So we're definitely looking at that. We're definitely looking at national reach right now in the U.S. In terms of going international, I can't say for certain because there's certain benefits for investing in U.S. companies for angel investors, tax benefits, et cetera, versus investing in companies that are outside of the U.S. as well. And let's say you lose your money, right? You can write things off here in the U.S. They're tax reasons, right? Essentially. But I think that doesn't mean that there's a number of angels who aren't willing to go look at Canada or South America or Europe or other places as well, right? So we're starting to see companies that are actually a company I'm just in discussions with right now that's a healthcare company based in Berlin that's now flipping to the U.S. They're going to have a Delaware right entity. They'll have an office here in Boston, and they'll continue having engineering and production in Germany, and then sales and marketing in the U.S. So I think we'll start seeing more of that as well. There's certainly, given the U.S. market and the investment in startups here, I think we'll continue seeing an inflow of companies in Europe or Asia who are saying, hey, great to have the business here, but we need to have a U.S. entity as well, right, to attract U.S. investors. So I think we'll start seeing more of that. And I think the company mentioned I think it was Freshworks, right, which just went public recently. And I think similar there, right, heavy India-based, but then also a U.S. entity as well, and going public in the U.S.
Agreed.
And being successful doing that. So, yeah.
No, for sure. I think that's a great segue for this globalization, for companies to realize that there's a lot of opportunities. And the U.S. seems to be always in the mix of your global opportunities. So it's something to always keep in mind when you are looking for venture capital, is that, starting in the U.S. or at least finishing somewhere in the U.S. is going to be beneficial to your business.
Right.
So I think that's been an amazing journey you're on, and you've worked with a lot of startups. You're part of a lot of different groups. We're going to transition into more of the rapid fire questions in a second. But before we do that, I've got one kind of question that I want to get your heartfelt moment of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And it could be a personal story, as you have many of them, is that, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? And has there been one that just pops in your head that just blows you away, that you thought this business that she or he didn't have a chance to survive, they pitched you or you invested, and then all of a sudden, they just, out of the blue, COVID hit, you thought that was it, and then boom, they turned it around, and today they're running on the NASDAQ. Is there some kind of great story that you see that might be worth sharing out to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not NASDAQ yet, but a company that I'm invested in and it's been advising for several years, since actually 2018, it's called Replay. And what we do is we have a SaaS platform. We take video of youth sports, baseball and softball, and provide that to players, coaches, and parents. And if you think through, right, pre-COVID, right, and what we do is we have relationships with tournament providers and facilities that have these major tournaments year round, and especially in the south of the U.S. But this is youth sports, and parents are absolutely passionate, right? And this is actually helping their kids get into college and playing baseball in college. So they pay thousands of dollars to go to these tournaments. That includes the clothing, the equipment, the travel to the sports places as well. And we have relationships with these facilities to actually, it's both a hardware and a software place. We have the SaaS platform. We have the cameras as well to take the video, and then we'll ingest the video, and we're actually using machine learning to start assigning numbers and cutting the plays and so on, and being able to provide individual plays to those players. Everything was fine pre-COVID, right? And we had this 3-year roadmap in terms of eventually automating things, right? And by design, we actually were very hands-on. So we hired this temporary labor to operate the cameras, to ingest the video, to do all the manual work, to eventually automate things. And then COVID hit, right? Tournaments shut down. So what do, right? So we were actually lucky in that we had investment from both Launchpad Venture Group, which I'm part of, and some other angels to at least keep us alive. And then also figure out what are we doing at this point. So a few good things. Justin Reels, the founder and CEO, former baseball player. And again, going back to your question of, founder grit and conviction, right? Justin's mentality is, look, if I'm a baseball player and I go up to bat, most of the time I'm going to strike out. Right? So I can't let that weigh on me, right? And he's got the same mentality in terms of building a startup. He's going to strike out a lot, whether it's sales, whether it's things going wrong and so on. He's going to figure out a way to work it, right? And figure out a way through the problems that he's facing and solve those problems. So he's been a fantastic entrepreneur to work with. And given COVID-19, he's accelerated the business. He's accelerated automation. He's built relationships with the MLB and college sports and other technology companies that provide sports-related technologies during COVID-19. And now he's coming out, as we're coming out of COVID-19, his tournaments are starting up again. He's positioned really well to grow and scale the business. And he's been all over the country the past 3-4 months as things have scaled, as tournaments have opened up. He's got relationships lined up. He's got a new board member who's really well connected in the sports industry. So it's one of those stories where you could have said that this company was very close to dying, right? And I mean, literally, I was on the call with Justin, and he said, "Look, we've got cash left for about a month. What are we doing?" Right? So, what should I do? Should I kind of not do this trip to Wisconsin because it's going to cost me $2,000 and some additional hotel costs? But if I do that, I might be able to build relationships with these providers and potential investors, right? So we just kind of bet the farm and say, go out to Wisconsin, right? Bet it all, and we'll see what comes out of it. And it's worked out well. We're not at NASDAQ yet, right? But we're looking to raise a Series A beginning of the year. So it's been a fantastic story, I think, in terms of resilience, grit, and just grinding through it and figuring out ways to make it work, right, despite the challenges.
I love it. Yeah, life is a challenge, and if you can't figure out how to work around it, then you've got fail. And these guys obviously looked at it and said, you know what, there's so much opportunity here. And I like the little coach and the push to go all in and make their way to Wisconsin. So that's pretty cool. Great story. All right, we're going to jump into the rapid fire questions now. Are you ready? These will be the business ones, so pick one or the other.
All right.
And we've got lots, but we'll go through them real quick. All right. Founder or co-founder?
For myself? Is that the question?
Yeah, what would you pick? Yeah, what would you go with? Founder or co-founder?
Co-founder.
Unicorn or 4-year 10 times exit?
4-year 10 exit.
Tech or CPG?
Tech.
Brand or tech?
Tech.
AI or blockchain?
AI.
First-time founder or second or third-time founder?
Second or third time.
First money in or Series A?
First money in.
Angel or VC?
Angel.
Board seat or observer?
Board seat.
Safe or convertible note?
Either. I'll get safe.
Lead or follow?
Follow.
Equity or interest payments?
Equity.
Favorite part of investing?
Not just the money, but also working with founders and helping coaching and guide them and helping them scale.
Perfect. Number of companies invested per year?
Approximately 6 to 7.
Brilliant. Any preferred terms?
No. I mean, yes. It's got to be a win-win for both sides, for both the investors and the founders.
Okay. Any verticals that you really like getting into?
B2B SaaS, and then applied AI as well. And then the third part, I would say, what I consider generational tracks, right? Tackling problems for millennials or the aging population and so on. So those 3 areas, my thing.
Okay. I like the aging population one. Mm-hmm. That's good. What 2 things do you see or look for that should stand out in a startup that will make you invest? 2 things that will make you invest in a standout startup.
Yeah, the team, the founder and co-founder, of them being coachable and having conviction and really understanding deeply the industry, right? So having product more than founder market fit, right? So that's number 1. 2 is really having a problem that's worth solving and being able to execute. I think it's less about the idea. It's more about the ability to execute. Ideas are worth a dozen, and there's so many times where we see startups pitching saying we're the only ones who are solving this problem, and you Google it, and within 5 seconds you have 20 other startups that are doing the same thing, right? So it's definitely people who understand their industry. It's really important.
Agreed. Yep. Favorite book? Oh, sorry, we're going to go on to personal questions now.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
Oh, favorite book? Well, how about, I'll give you 2, right? So okay. A book I'm reading right now, I'll show you this one. Actually, the cover's off, but Startup CXL. It's by Matt Bloomberg, who is, I actually work for his company called Bolster. So we provide fractional CXL services. So highly recommend it. It's a good field guide. Just came out about 3 weeks ago. So
and his name is Matt. What's it? Matt
Bloomberg. So Bloomberg,
he's okay.
Yep. And yes, highly recommend the book. Just finishing that. If you're a dad of a daughter, highly recommend Rebel Girls. There's my daughter. So say hi. So she's
hello.
Yeah, it's a good book about women, entrepreneurs, heroes, etc. throughout history. So she loves the book. I read it to her every night.
It's called Rubber Girl.
Rebel Girls, right? Okay, Rebel Girl. So okay, mostly every night. So okay,
that's cool.
All right.
I'm gonna look this up.
I'm having she's giving editorial comments here right now. So
perfect. She can help coach along. That works so great. All right. More rapid fire on the personal side. Book or movie?
Book.
Superman or Batman?
Batman.
Pizza Pop or ice cream bar?
Ice cream bar.
5 minutes with Bezos or Oprah?
Bezos.
Arsenal or Manchester United?
Oh, Manchester.
I will find an Arsenal fan. I
Okay.
will find an Arsenal fan. Bike or rollerblades?
Bike.
Big Mac or Chicken McNuggets?
Oh, Chicken nuggets.
Big Mac for me.
All right. Trophy or money?
Money.
Money.
Rich.
I like that. Beer or wine?
Wine.
Alarm clock or mobile phone?
Oh, mobile phone. Yep.
Hotel or hostel?
Hostel.
Ah, you're the best. First one. Yes.
Yeah.
Hospital.
I like
No,
that.
hostel. That's different than a hospital.
Yeah, we don't want the hospital.
No.
King or rich?
Oh, rich.
Rich.
Concert
So
or amusement park?
Concert.
Amusement
Fortune cookie or birthday cake?
Birthday cake.
Birthday cake.
Is life boring without Trump?
It's better.
Huh? What?
Okay.
Oh,
Favorite sports team?
Keep it at that. Go ahead.
Sports team.
Oh, favorite sports team. Patriots. I'll give you two. Patriots football, and then soccer. Werder Bremen in Germany. Soccer team.
Yes. Oh, very good. Cool.
Yeah.
First brand that pops into your mind right now?
Coca-Cola.
Nike.
Nice. Nike. All right. Most famous person that pops in your mind right now?
Einstein.
Frankie.
No, that's your cat. Albert Einstein. It's not a person.
Oh, the cat's good. I like that. That's
right.
That's good. All right. What is your favorite movie and what character would you play?
Oh, favorite movie, Indiana Jones, the first one. And I would play Harrison Ford's character, Indiana Jones. Yeah.
I just watched that whole series like literally 4 months ago. So
Harry Potter.
I actually didn't realize I didn't watch the last one. It was good. It was good.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. What is your superpower?
Make
hugs. Torturing my cat.
Okay, hugs. It's Earth. For me, it's creating certainty from uncertainty.
I have no idea.
Creating certainty from uncertainty. I like that one, but I'm going with hugs. That's better.
Yes. Hugs are great.
All right, that's perfect. Brilliant. Well, Erik, I want to say thank you very much. Sorry, what's your daughter's name?
What's your name? Sydney.
Sydney. Well, Erik, it was a pleasure speaking with you in Sydney. I want to thank you very much for all your time today, sharing the journey, sharing the questions and the answers. Thank you very much for that. The way we like to end our show is we like to give you the last word. So anything that you want to say to investors or to startup, I turn it over to you. But thank you again for sharing everything today.
Thanks for having me, Jeffrey. Really appreciate it. I really enjoyed being on. So in terms of the last word, I think work with a lot of early stage founders and who are either the first time on the journey or the second or third time. I think no matter what part of the journey you're in, it's an exciting time. It's been an exciting time for starting things up, and especially with COVID-19 hitting last year. The first few months, no one knew what was going to happen. I think that as we're coming out of this, there's a lot of good coming out of it, right? A lot of innovation, a lot of excitement in terms of where we can go post COVID-19. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity. I think part of what the pandemic has done is really accelerated certain sectors as well, which is really exciting. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in fintech, a lot of exciting stuff happening in healthcare and life sciences as well, things that have really accelerated, e-commerce as well. So there's so much opportunity. If you have the opportunity to start something up and find a really meaningful problem to solve it, do it and go after it. Have the conviction, have the grit to do it and give it a shot. Right? It's an exciting time, and starting something up and building something is exciting.
I love it. Well said. And you're right. Get out there and make it happen. You've got one life, so you might as well start today. So build a great company, and there's lots of people out there that are going to want to jump in and help you out. So, Erik, again, brilliant. Thank you very much for all your time today. You too, Sydney. And we're going to leave it at that, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Take care.
That was awesome. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I just love the journey that Erik went on, and just kind of the learning that you take when you really get into that early stage company and being that getting in and being that first employee into a company that's a startup, the learning that you gather from raising funds to things that you got to fix, new problems, and being dedicated and focused. I just think that's phenomenal. And I really enjoyed that you had such a creative journey on learning all the way through and and being able to then jump into investing, but then going into the impact side and really trying to make a difference and helping minority founders as well as female founders raise dollars and build their companies. So kudos, Erik, for an amazing career and being able to give back and help out and doing a lot of great things. And some of the things that you kind of mentioned that kind of really stand out, of course, was the Reggie Dunlop with the player coach side is that when you're going to get in there, find people that can really help you grow your business and find that clutch second, third person that's going to support you in your business. I think it makes a big difference, that COO role, and just help them grow and help them support and build your company. So big fan. Again, thank you very much, Erik. Brilliantly said. And of course, thank you for having your daughter jump in. That was great too. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Stitcher. You can also check us out at supportersfund.com. And for other startup events, please visit us at opn.ninja. Thank you and have a fantastic day.